I started it, then I stopped it.
Because you didn't want to hear that part? Good one. Good.
All right.
It's good. I call to order the Oswego Community Unit School District 308 Board of Education meeting. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Baumann,
Here.
Mrs. Doyle,
Here.
Mrs. Kloner,
Here.
Mr. Lightfoot,
Present.
Miss Morgan,
Here.
Mrs. Moyer,
Here.
Mrs. Swanson.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's not going to my little thing. Hang on.
You have Elizabeth? No.
On behalf of the Board of Education, I welcome you to tonight's meeting. In order to accommodate safe distancing for board members and staff, we are not able to allow community members to be present this evening. As stated on the agenda, community members were invited to submit their comments by email to the Board of Education Secretary, to be read by the Board of Education President, or to request a Zoom link to make their comments virtually. We value the feedback we receive from our residents and encourage everyone to take an active interest in their public school system. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person, and no discussion of personnel matters, including names or specific job titles or responses to questions, are permitted. The board does not participate in discussion during public comment. Follow-up to your questions or concerns will be addressed by administration through the contact information you've provided. Thank you.
Elizabeth Palatine. She says she's on.
She takes like a minute, I think.
I just texted her.
And we gave all that extra time.
Oh.
Shall we come back to that?
Yeah, why don't you move on?
Yeah. Melanie McAllister.
Dear School Board 308, thank you for your time. I think we are doing a disservice to our students by not providing a science curriculum to them and making it all independent work videos. Students learn critical thinking and problem-solving skills from science. For example, for second grade, at least 50 videos about making homemade glue out of cornstarch, water, flour, and salt. Can we possibly change science topics? Even myself as a parent is getting totally bored. Thanks.
Sid Lasic.
Looking at the agenda for tonight, is there not any more discussion about Phase 2 of the hybrid plan? I hope there is further thought put into this for the safety of elementary kids and teachers specifically. Last meeting, it was stated and documented that Group A and B would be combined along with others that opt into in-person learning for 5 days of learning. If that is true, will there not be a limit on the numbers of students allowed in a classroom to meet all social distancing requirements? Each class having 20 students is basically normal non-COVID ratios. Other districts that have 5 days a week offered have a limit per class and a waiting list. I hope we stay focused on the safety factor like we have for almost a year. Thank you.
Mary Conkin.
Good evening. As the board and administration begin to look at Phase 2, I would ask that you consider adding more in-person learning time for students with IEPs. Most of these students already have an educational gap between them and their peers. Remote learning has only increased that gap. I ask that you consider that all students with IEPs be allowed back in the classroom 4 days a week. Thank you.
Elizabeth Palatine.
No. Good. She's muted.
She is on. She's muted.
Okay.
Can you unmute?
Now you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Hello?
Kind of quiet.
You can hear me?
Speak up.
Okay. Good evening. I am Elizabeth Palatine, co-president of the Oswego Education Association. There is a strong desire for our world and specifically our schools to return to something close to normal. Desperately wanting that day to get here soon is expected. What we do while we all wait for that day to actually arrive is the subject of intense debate. During remote learning for all, teachers have been focused and determined to do what is needed for our students. That effort and dedication is what has made our schools thrive. As students return to the classroom, teachers maintain the same focus, but are now being asked to teach in 2 different ways and 2 different formats. The Phase 2 school day, as presented to the teachers, does not incorporate the time necessary to execute this task. Teachers need the time to collaborate, modify individual learning plans, create in-person and remote lessons, as well as maintain the day-to-day expectations of the classroom. These essential tasks are needed for students to receive the high-quality education they deserve. And in order to provide this, teachers need the time, opportunity, and resources. The safety of students, teachers, and other staff is of great concern. Many, but not all, elementary classrooms are projected to have enrollments if A and B sections are combined, near what we see in a world without a raging pandemic. In addition, some will have students that will push into classrooms along with teaching assistants to help throughout the day. Social distancing will be severely limited in many classrooms with the close proximity between students and staff. Maintaining standards to the safest guidelines put forth by the CDC and IDPH should be paramount, including implementing actions to slow the spread of the virus inside the school and recognizing that COVID-19 spreads mainly among people who are in close contact for a prolonged period. Planning for February should be done with a focus on these priorities, especially with the possibility of a more contagious strain becoming dominant in the United States. Now is not the time to cut corners on implementing the safest plan possible. We all have shared responsibility to take the steps that are within our control to help keep ourselves, our colleagues, our students, and our community safe. Thank you.
Item 5.1, board member comments. Who'd like to begin?
I will begin. I had the opportunity to visit 2 of our junior high schools today with Lori. We went to Trauber and Plank to see some 6th graders on their orientation day. It was very quiet. They were all very quiet, and they were all very good about staying on the right side of the hallway and keeping distance from each other. And it was, I'm sure they will warm up after a couple days. They looked all very nervous. And so hopefully their concerns were put to ease today. We reassured them that every kid is nervous going into 6th grade, and every kid's late to class at some point because it's new. So I'm glad that we have had the opportunity for them to get in and have that orientation that's really important for them. So.
Anyone else? Tony?
Okay. Are we going in a row?
You
or-
go ahead, Matt.
So we're into week number 2 of a monumental transition back into in-person learning in the district with our students. And a lot of anxiety for some, excitement for others, but it sounds like things are going well. And this gives us an opportunity. One of the things that I heard at our last board meeting when we kind of looked at phase 1 and a phase 2 is this gives us an opportunity to find out what's working, what's not working, and what we need to change. But I do want to just acknowledge to the parents who are dealing with the change, the teachers, the administration, everyone that's going through this change that we're going through right now, that we're getting through it. It's going well. We may tweak some things up a little bit, but it's moving in the right direction. So I want to give just a big word of thanks to everyone from our administration, teachers, to the parents, to the kids doing what they're supposed to do and learning how to do new school now temporarily, hopefully, or as long as they need to. But I just wanted to acknowledge that during this time frame, this immense week of change back into the in-person schooling, I think everyone's doing a terrific job, and just wanted to say that out loud.
Anything? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I am glad that we're acknowledging that it's a time of adjustment for people. It's a time of adjustment for everybody who works for the district to be able to make in-person learning and remote learning continue to be strong and well done. We have an excellent staff, and I hope that all the staff out there knows that we're trying our best as a board to consider staff needs and that we want to see them get through the pandemic alive and well, and we want to exercise as much caution as possible, because caution means that somebody is out there walking around instead of not. And the teachers have been doing an excellent job. They really have been doing a great job this whole year, and I think they will continue to do a great job. Now we're seeing the other layers come back, right? The custodians are coming back, and the lunch, well, not the lunch people, but the secretaries and the nurses and all those folks. In light of where we are at tonight, I think we all have to understand that there's a lot of adjustments that are going to go back and forth. And what I appreciate a lot as a teacher and as a person in the community is when people are understanding about those adjustments, when they give people credit for what they're trying to do and try to be helpful in the moment of problems. We can complain, we can say that things should be different, but we really need to be able to say, you know what, we're having a problem, let's figure out some ways to get through this, and then get through it, and not make it into a blame game or something ugly. So I really hope that everybody out there will consider what they can do from their point of view and their capacity to help out with that situation and just make it as good as it can be.
Cool. I actually did get to visit with Ruth today. Their 2 6th grade agree, totally quiet. I asked my favorite question, when was the last time you wore new shoes? And I was told how many people bought new shoes because they've outgrown shoes since the last time they had to wear them all day. I thought that was pretty fun. In addition, Dr. Sparlin and I visited at 4 different elementary schools last week. And it was really fun to get to see our kindergartners and some of our kids from early childhood get to come in their cute, teeny, tiny little masks. And I know that every year we talk about with graduation how it is one of those things that when you like school boarding, it just kind of makes you happy to see. And I think that seeing the kids in the hallways was really good. Seeing them behaving was really good. Seeing our teachers a little relieved because they know what to expect now was really good. Doesn't mean it's perfect. It does mean that once you face what you don't know, it becomes less scary. And I think that that will help our community immensely. I know that there's still more to come for junior high and high school, and that it'll get there. It's not going to get there on day one. But it looked good. My favorite thing was that I got stumped by a 5th grade brain teaser when I was thinking about it, so I made Dr. Sparlin answer it. He too got stumped. So fair enough. Fair enough. We were not smarter than 5th graders. However, I was told they all got stumped too, so that made me feel better. But it was a good visit. We will be visiting out. I know Mr. Lightfoot and I are planning to visit a few more. We're going to keep visiting out till we get a chance to get to all the schools. So whoever else wants to, please let me know if you have time in the day. Anything else? Dr. Sparlin, item 5.2? Or actually, no, not you. Haha, I lied. 5.2 is board committee reports.
Yes.
Finance and facilities.
Go right ahead, Brent.
Oh. So Ruth and I had our committee meeting last week. We reviewed, primarily we talked about the Del Webb proposed community. There were, as expected, a lot of very good questions and in-depth questions by the committee. There were some ideas thrown out, which that's the best part of having the committee, is to hear fresh ideas. And I can honestly say I don't think there wasn't a consensus or direction, but there was, some, interesting takes. Like, I know one of the questions was, well, if we know that the 55 plus community is obviously going to have no impact on the school district, can those be built, was it first or second?
First.
Yeah, can those be built first and then wait on the family homes later, because those would have an impact on the school district. But we would start accruing property tax revenue, obviously, from the 55 plus homes if those were built first. Now, we were told, right, Christy, that they cannot do that.
Right.
Their plans are in place the way they are. Ruth, you have anything to add to?
Not really. I would agree that there were a lot of great questions, and then we also discussed the facility update impact, and so that was good as well. A lot of great questions and comments as well with that. It was a great meeting. So it was
The facility update impact?
Capital projects.
Capital.
yeah, capital projects for facilities. Mr. Allison presented with pictures.
It's always scary when you see those pictures of all the
Yeah.
parking lots that are
There's
falling
some
apart and the
rough-looking
sidewalks
things.
that are crumbling. and-
They've got real high-quality cameras on those, too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else? Teaching and learning?
We had our teaching and learning committee meeting on January 13th. We had a presentation about our climate for learning framework, which the board I think saw back in September, but it was a good presentation for our teaching and learning committee. And then we also talked about the remote learning and hybrid plan that had been presented at the board on the 11th. Many of our committee members had, seen that presentation, so we kind of zipped through it, but were able to field some questions and hopefully get some good information, out there to our committee members, who can, then hopefully bring it back to the community and their neighbors and whatnot. Tony? Do you have
Just,
any-
I think that as usual at the Teaching and Learning Committee, the people, and just notice how closely I speak into my mic.
Yeah.
I'm saying that because I really think you have to be heard, especially for the people out there, and because I have two sisters who have hearing issues, so I think it's important to talk loudly. It's also important to use good adverbs.
Especially when there's snow.
Yes, it's snowing. So what I'm going to say is this. We had good questions from faculty, and we had good questions from parents that attended the meeting. And what they did was they gave us ideas, as usual, of things that we could do to better prepare the whole situation to be complete for the return to school, and for, considerations that have to do with how employees view the job. So everybody on that committee is very much appreciated, and they give the board a lot of insight. They give the district administrators a lot of insight, and I appreciate them spending that extra time in addition to their workday to come to that meeting.
Now it's your turn, Dr. Sproul, on 5.3.
Thank you, Mrs. Doyle. Good evening, Board. I have a few items I'd like to share with you this evening. On Tuesday, January 19th, we began our next phase of a reopening plan as we welcomed our elementary students back to school. I started the day riding a bus with the elementary students going to Old Post Elementary. As you know, that's kind of a tradition that I do, and the first day of school, and it really felt like it was the first day of school. So I rode the bus, and as Mrs. Doyle said, she and I had the opportunity to visit a number of schools. I will say that I think I speak for both of us. We were very impressed with with each one of our visits, the expectations, the protocols, everything that's been put into place were being followed, and I received really nothing but positive reports from that first week. All of the directors, along with Faith and Christy, were also in the schools helping out when needed, taking notes, and doing anything to help support building principals and administrators. And we'll continue to do that over the next couple weeks as we begin welcoming some of our secondary students back today. On another note, I'd like to congratulate all of our high school students from both OEHS and OHS who participated and placed in this year's regional scholastic art competition. We had so many students earn awards, the list is too long to name students individually, but the top winners of the region will go on to compete nationally in New York. So I wish all those art students the best at nationals this year. And finally, this year, due to COVID, the Pride program, proudly recognized an individuals demonstrating excellence program, was modified, and the schools all submitted to the district a nomination of one teacher and one employee to be considered. So we have 4 teachers and 2 employees that were randomly selected through the Wheel of Names drawing on Facebook. And so congratulations to the following Pride winners for January. In the category of teachers, we honor Sarah Caffarello from Churchill, Sue Shimp from Lakewood Creek, Nicole Watson from Long Beach, and Michelle Neverez from Oswego East. And in the category of employees, we honor Charlie Matoyer from Lakewood Creek and Drew Munsinger from OHS. So, board, if you would please join me in congratulating our Pride winners for the month of January. Congratulations to each and every one of you. That is my report for this evening, and thank you.
Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve all items under consent, including 6.1 minutes from the Board of Education meeting on January 11th, 2020, open and closed session, and 6.2 to acknowledge the FOIA requests received by the district.
Second.
Mrs. Moyer,
Aye.
Mr. Lightfoot,
Aye.
Mrs. Croner,
Aye.
Mr. Baumann,
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson,
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle,
Aye.
Miss Morgan.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Item 7.1.
Item 7.1 is an annual information report in regards to next year's school calendar. Last Wednesday, the calendar committee met to discuss the 21-22 calendar, and those recommendations are reflected in the calendar that has been presented to the board this evening. Mrs. Doyle, would you like me to go through the calendar?
Does anyone on the board need to go through the calendar, or do you have any questions?
I'm good.
I think we're good.
I trust the good work of the committee involved.
Yeah, as a teacher, I appreciate the Christmas, the extra 2 days of Christmas.
I think it'll be safe to say that if you have not looked at the calendar, you should be looking at that Christmas break planning early, because all of Oswego will be booking tomorrow once they have dates. So, unless it's already out of executive content. Okay, 7.2.
Eric, if you could pull up the presentation. Thank you. Okay, tonight we are presenting our budget reduction plan, which will mitigate our deficit moving forward. As you all know, we've had a number of conversations around our finances and what we potentially will need to do to mitigate the deficit. Tonight is an informational presentation that will allow us to share what we've done in the past, what our current deficit is for 2021, and the school year, and what needs to be done to balance the budget and increase our fund balance in the future. Back in 2016, I think those of you who are with us, you remember the conversation we had when we shared a do-nothing scenario. What that meant was if we didn't do anything differently by 2020, we would have been not only bankrupt, but had a $15 million deficit. We obviously were not going to allow that to happen, so we began the conversation and started making cuts. And as you will see on slide 5, our ending fund balance this year is close to $20 million. Slide 2 and slide 3 highlights the cuts that have been made, starting with the 2016-2017 school year through the 2019-2020 school year. I'm not going to go through all those cuts, but I did feel it is important to highlight the work that has been done in previous years to obtain a balanced budget. So slide 4 brings us to our present day. As you know, the board had to make the hard decision to pass a deficit budget for the 2021 school year. We all know and understand that the deficit is attributed to no new money being allocated from the state for the evidence-based funding formula due to COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, slide 5. I've asked Christy to take the board through this slide.
Thank you. So presented here are updated 5-year projections with the updates being to the fiscal year 21 budget. As a reminder, the budget was adopted before September 30th, and at that time, we were planning a return to in-person learning in November. So the assumptions used in these projections include CPI that will be used for the levy that will be filed this December, which we now know is 1.4%, $5 million worth of reductions in fiscal year 22. Evidence-based funding remains flat in fiscal year 22 with increases returning in fiscal year 23. A second round of CARES funding, which is spread amongst fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23. So these numbers in fiscal year 21, I've updated those to represent the savings that we've experienced while students and staff are in our remote learning phase. So savings in fiscal year 21 are coming in the areas of substitute costs, PPE supplies, some classroom supplies, contracted transportation and food service, as well as transportation salaries. And there's also some adjustments to revenue in lunch sales and athletic activity club fees. But as you can see, with those adjustments, that has reduced our expected deficit from the adopted budget, which was $5.9 million. And with these updates, we are expecting our deficit for fiscal year 21 to end around $1.5 million. So this does help our fund balance moving forward. So as Dr. Sparlin said, we're expected to end this fiscal year, the current fiscal year, with just about $19.1 million. And taking those assumptions and projections forward, we are expecting to end fiscal year 26 at $39.8 million.
Thank you, Christy.
Okay.
All right, moving on. Earlier this year, the board directed the administration to present a plan that would cut $5 million from next year's budget. In doing so, we identified 3 priorities. Those were, 1, maintain a quality climate for learning for students, which goes with our goal over the past 4 years of trying our best to balance the budget with minimal effect of the education of our students. 2, find efficiencies with our current practices. And 3, to find reductions that are sustainable. So tonight we're going to present budget reductions and cost savings in 6 key areas. Those areas are district administrative budgets, district administrative positions, staff reductions due to declining enrollment, secondary reductions, lessons learned from remote learning, and other. So starting in the area of district administrative budgets. This is an item we've talked about already briefly, but leased drivers' education vehicles. Currently, vehicles are rented on a daily rate of $22.50 or approximately $675 per month per vehicle. Switching to a lease for the 6 vehicles used for driver's education would cost approximately $266 per month. It would result in about $29,400 savings. The next item is reduced maintenance budgets. Here we are proposing weekend building checks be reduced to 1 day per weekend, except during the cold months. And this is an item that will need to be collectively bargained, as it is in the OCMA contract, but it is an estimated at a $32,000 savings. The next item is to restructure benefits. One of the more innovative ways to reduce our expenditures is through entering into a direct contracting relationship with a major medical provider in our area. This innovative approach to negotiate rates directly with the major medical providers, as opposed to relying upon Blue Cross and Blue Shield to negotiate on our behalf, will allow everyone to benefit. Our employees will receive an unprecedented enhancement to their medical insurance. the major medical provider will see an increase in their share of business, and the district will save approximately $285,000 next year from a reduced cost for the services provided. This is a major project that has been in the works for some time, does not require any MOUs, and is in the final stages of preparation for a launch this spring, which will also generate additional savings this year as well. The total savings for that is approximately $285,000 a year. The next item is renegotiate property and liability insurance. We worked with brokers to negotiate savings with carriers to reduce the annual premium, and we were able to save $100,000. Yeah, the next item, reduce technology professional development. We have been doing more training in-house and plan to continue this practice for the future. And the last item in this area is eliminate Dreambox. Is that up there now? Yep. Oh, I'm sorry, 1 second.
On the original list.
Yes, reduce technology, eliminate Dreambox, yes. And the final item in that category is to do that. This is a supplemental elementary math software program that has not had widespread use. Title I schools could still use their money to continue the use if needed or wanted, and that would be $54,000. And that comes, the total district administrative budget reductions totals $526,200. All right, slide 9 is reduction to administrative positions. The second area of cuts in regards to a reduction is district administrative positions. We've identified 8 positions that would be eliminated, which will provide $661,500 in savings annually. Those positions have been shared with the board and are not listed this evening because this is an informational presentation and those discussions have not been had with those employees at this time. What is important is that we feel that we can save $661,500 by making those changes. Slide 10, the next area we looked at are staff reductions due to a declining enrollment. It is important to note that we have had a declining enrollment in elementary for some time, and for the past few years, we have reduced FTE in the area of elementary teaching staff to coincide with that declining enrollment. It's also important to note, due to our declining enrollment, we would be making this recommendation even if we weren't talking about budget reductions. The board has set class size divisors, and we follow those class divisors when creating sections during staffing. The reality is, when you have fewer students, you have fewer staff. This reduction equates to a $2.1 million savings. The next item is in regards to reductions to the secondary level that are not due to a declining enrollment. In this category, we feel we can find the amount listed by looking at efficiencies, looking at some of our schedules, and making some adjustments where kids are not affected. Reductions in this area equate to $914,000. Okay, now we're going to transition to lessons learned from remote learning. The first item is stop printing student planners. Because we will be one-to-one at the secondary level, we want to train students to use a digital calendar instead of a printed calendar. We estimate those savings to be approximately $45,000. The next item is reduce the need for subs and associated costs. During a regular school year, much money is spent on paying to do internal coverage when subs are unavailable. This is very costly. And during remote learning, we utilize Google Classroom for teachers to post assignments and learning activities. The same practice could be done when we are back in person, and then since the instruction was provided by a certified teacher, student supervision could be provided by a teaching assistant or dean assistant at a much lower cost. Even with hiring an additional teaching assistant at each school to cover classes and reduce costs, the estimated savings is approximately $300,000 a year. All right, next idea is to move to 4 days of in-person and 1 day of online instruction in the 21-22 school year. A couple of years ago, when we were looking at a cost savings, we looked at the concept of a 4-day school week. Many schools in the western United States have done this for that very reason, for cost savings. Tonight, we are not proposing that. Rather, propose the idea of 4 days a week in person with 1 day fully remote. During remote learning, we utilize new technology and instructional practice to instruct students. Now that we will be one-to-one for junior high and high school students, we could have 4 days a week of in-person with 1 day of digital learning scheduled for these levels. Students would continue to gain experience with digital and independent learning, and the savings will be through reduced transportation and energy costs of approximately $491,000 a year. And the last item here is the idea of moving goal to a hybrid model of instruction with in-person and remote options. So the GOAL program services around 50 to 60 students. The acronym GOAL stands for Granting Opportunities Through Alternative Learning. What we are proposing here is to provide even more opportunity, or what could be thought of as an alternate plan of learning for students in this program. Students at GOAL complete their work online in a self-paced fashion. The need for many of those students to be physically present doesn't hold true anymore with today's technology. The suggestion here is to modify the current program and to assess and place students in hybrid or in-person learning based on the student individual learning needs. Those students who demonstrate they don't need to physically attend school to be successful would be offered the ability to complete their work remotely as long as they are meeting expectations and being successful. We believe we can save around $280,000 by making those modifications, and the total from lessons learned from remote learning is $1.1 million. All right. Slide 13 highlights savings in what we titled Other Areas. The first is reduce high school operating budget by 10%. That would be athletics and academics. We've talked with the high school administrators, and they concur with that recommendation. That would be a $86,000 savings. The next item is offer retirement incentive for eligible employees. One of the ideas to reduce our expenditures is to look at ways to better incentivize teachers who may like to retire but can't for insurance reasons. When this issue was last studied during the 18-19 school year, it was discovered that each of our teachers who could retire but had not yet declared their intent to do so had district medical insurance with dependents covered under the plan. So there are currently approximately 40 teachers who are eligible to retire but have not decided to do so. Of these teachers, all but 3 have dependents covered under the medical insurance. With a well-thought-out incentive to address this need, and with participation similar to what we had during the 18-19 school year, it's estimated that savings could be $50,000 for the FY21 budget. It is important to note that this is a conservative figure, and that the savings could exceed the $50,000 mark, but it is believed that the savings would not be less than $50,000. And the last item in this category, titled Other Areas, is utilize staff retirement savings. And this is simply the difference between retiring staff and refilling those positions at $374,000. Slide 14, the slide shows the totals from each of the 6 categories that we've identified, totaling $5,701,700. At this time, I'd like to open the floor to discussion and eventually direction from the board on your thoughts, as our intention is to bring the list of cuts to mitigate the deficit to the board at the February 8th Board of Education meeting for approval.
Let's start with Tony. Do you have any thoughts that you, or questions
Yeah, I
directly
took
related to
some
this?
notes while Dr. Sparlin was going through it. And I just want to say, first of all, thank you to Dr. Sparlin and all the other people who I know had to help find these savings, because it is a huge relief when we were confronting another $6 million worth of cuts to have such good suggestions come up and such a very detailed, lengthy list of good suggestions. And that I think you incorporated, Dr. Sparlin, a lot of the things that we were hearing from the community the last time we tried to cut, and things that we've seen in letters from the community. So I want people to know that information gets through. People are using that information to look for ways to save money. And then just to say to the public, you know, as we go through this and we have the discussion about how this is going to come out, that when you look at all these cuts, it's really the best we can do, but still, less special education assistants. I know some of those folks, and it's very hard for them to do their job right now, and I think it's going to be harder once we make these cuts. Less subs, that's been an issue for a long time in schools, not being able to get the sub coverage, and what happens is sometimes people are pulled that are reading specialists, or they have some other job to do, and then the kids don't get that service for the day. And then the 4 days a week for school, I'm not happy about it, but I see why that saves money, and I see why that's a way in a school district like ours where we really need some money to find a way to get through this situation. So I think it's a pretty solid package. And then there's some things that I was just like, yay, no more paper planners. So thank you, Dr. Sparlin, and all the other people that are involved in that.
Well, thank you, Tony. It was a team effort, so appreciate it.
Brent?
I don't want to totally echo that, but appreciate all the work that's been put into this. It's never fun, but I have to say, again, while none of this is fun or easy, I think this is one of the more straightforward and reasonable plans that we as a board have looked at when we started talking specific to budget reductions. I think I'm good with everything on here, and I just have an ancillary comment regarding what was the math program, and it doesn't matter what it's called. I guess my only comment there is if we've identified systems that are not used in every building, meaning that they're not preferred or most effective, should those programs continue, right? And I understand if we get Title I funds to pay for programs, that's great, but then what we end up with 20 to 50 programs, and if we were to ever lose that funding, then we have to make a determination on what to move forward on, and it just seems unmanageable. And so it's just an overarching comment that I think we should make sure that we're only implementing the most proven programs in the district. And if they work in one building, they should work in another. And I think it would make things simpler for teachers as they move between buildings, and simpler for administration when we're trying to determine which programs are implemented for which students of need.
Allie?
I got a couple questions. So I'm looking at the leased driver's ed vehicles. So my concern there would be, I guess, 5 periods of day of driver's ed. I know most leases have mileage restrictions.
So we worked with our current department chairs on what that mileage should be, and they recommended, 12,000 miles. And what we would do, just like we do with the buses, is swap them out, swap the cars that are being used a lot to more local drives then. So we would just monitor that we stay within those parameters over the 3 years.
And then the restructuring of benefits always freaks me out. And again, I'm sure you guys have done a ton of work, but I worry about limiting choice for some families, but I'm sure you guys will address that. And then underneath the number 3, the decreasing elementary teachers, I noticed that it says without changing class size caps, right? But I would maybe caution the board that when you start implementing a lot of these changes in class size, like it also is class minimums. And especially at the high school level, like that could affect some classes even running. So I guess I would want to know maybe from the high schools what classes this could potentially affect, right? Like I wouldn't want to drop an AP course that was low.
This is just elementary.
Well, I mean, but it's going to, if we're making these cuts across the board, it's going to affect everybody because
These ones here, Ellie, at the the elementary, that's due to the declining enrollment in elementary. So what that meant without changing size caps, that actually just means maintain the current divisors that we use for K2 and 3-5. And by utilizing the same numbers that we've utilized over the last couple of years, it results in
Okay,
reductions.
well, because what concerned me about that was then when we got to the high school, it said they were going to reduce by 10%. So that'd be a quick way to reduce at a high school too.
Oh, that was that was their
Operating
operating budget.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where it's
Athletics
86,000.
and academics.
Well, but that
operating
affects kids,
expenses.
right? So when we start cutting 10% at the high school, that affects kids. I mean, not all of these things obviously affect kids in some way, shape, or form, but that one just a little bit more directly for me. Like, I guess my question would be, how much did we save on paper at the junior high and high school levels alone this year?
I guess it'll depend if they have devices in time and our Chromebooks get delivered.
And
know more
I'm a
about
hard no on that 4 days a week once we get back to regular school.
Thank you.
But I appreciate all the work you guys did.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple of items. Impeccable timing with declining enrollment, that helped out immensely without having to make a vote on a reduction to that magnitude. I would want to make sure that the recommendation for goal is something that is really a strong recommendation from everybody involved in moving goal students to a hybrid at-home digital curriculum. That program runs for a reason, and I guess I want to understand the methods and the reasoning behind or thinking that that's a good idea to move to a hybrid scenario, if not out of necessity for the goal program. And lastly, Christy, I believe I heard you state that 2023 on that one of the early slides, you started to include evidence-based funding back into the projections.
Yes, that's correct.
Would it be too much work if we as a board could just see what that looked like flat without annual increases?
So
No. Yep.
flat fiscal year 22, 23, and then come back in 24?
No,
would
we
go
had
to
asked
25
last time for
or
it to be,
20. I would
Flat
just-
to
all
have
the way?
none.
Yep.
Yeah, just for the pessimist in me.
Well, and that's what we'd asked for, is
And
to
that's
see.
what I told
Yeah.
you we had ready to present as
Yeah.
well.
Okay, yeah, so that's the only thing, I'd just like to see those numbers without the increase in state funding.
Can I ask a clarifying question on goal? Just because Matt brought it up. I think goal is online currently, but it's
Yes,
in a
the-
building.
No, that's what I said. The goal program is an online, self-paced program. So, and some kids can be successful without having to come to school, doing the online, self-paced program at school. And as we evaluate those students, if those students are, we know who those students are, and we allow them to do the program from an alternative location, most likely home, which may be much more convenient because it's self-paced and they can do this program at any time. They don't have to be sitting there from 8 to 12. They could be at work from 8 to 12, but as long as they're getting the program and it's being monitored and they're being successful, that's what we're talking
And
about.
Dr. Sparlin, we wouldn't be in charge of that. The teachers who know the kids would be in charge of which
Right,
students
right.
that could affect.
On a case-by-case basis with parent input.
With parent input and approval, of course. And that number could be higher, could be lower. It just depends on the student, the students that are being served in that program even any given year.
Heather?
Sticking just with the some clarity around the goal, the goal program. I'm wondering how this number, how you came up with this number. Were goal administrators and teachers talked to? Did they give some input? Do we have a sense of what percentage of students we anticipate would be successful with this, alternative kind of model?
To answer the question of which amount of kids would be successful, I would hope all kids that would be successful with it, because if the kids that would be able to participate, do this part, we're talking about here, hybrid, not having to come in.
Right.
They've identified as probably not needing to have to come in and receive some of the additional resources. And to answer the second part of the question, yes, the director, the principal, worked with Valerie Patterson on that. So that would be Meredith.
Okay. And when we say hybrid, in terms of the idea of goal, what does that does mean? It sounds like that could be fully remote for some of those students that would meet some of that criteria that we're talking about.
What it would mean is that if they're on location or not, they're all fully remote
Right.
and they're all self-paced. It's just,
okay.
are they sitting in the school in front of the teachers because they need that additional help or need to have that structure in their day as compared to some that may not. As we all know, with online learning, some kids are thriving. It's been wonderful for them, and some kids are doing well, and some kids struggle. So this would fall in that same kind of category.
And then finally, I'm probably mistaken, but so goal is fully online. There's no in-person instruction outside of supportive help that students might need to manage their curriculum or whatnot.
I believe there may be some instruction right now with Algebra 2, and then any additional supports that a student may need. So there are those pieces in place as well.
Okay. And, obviously the highlight, or, I think the focus and goal for me is we know that these are some of our most vulnerable students. And so, making sure that,
The teachers
just
and
because-
the staff that work with them
Right,
know them best and know that they're capable of doing
right. And certainly just because we can doesn't mean we should. And we know that for a lot of, a lot of reasons. So, I did have just, I do have some concerns around the idea of the 4-day in-person, school week. That is kind of a concern for me. I had a couple of questions related to a few of the DAC positions that we received in a separate document, which I can certainly just follow up on what that could look like if those changes were made and what that could look like. So we're covering how those needs are met.
Are there anything specific when you mentioned the idea of 4 days in person, 1 day online instruction? Obviously, there's work to be done in the background of that. But what we've learned from lessons learned again, in remote learning is that's something we can do, and that's something that I think is a good out of the box idea to explore.
Right, and so. Would that be an optional scenario, or would that be across the board for the junior high? We're talking about our secondary levels.
Correct. We're talking secondary level, 6-12, and our conversations as we explore this idea would be that no, it wouldn't be an option. It would be across the board, because that's where the largest part of the savings comes from decreased transportation, salaries, fuel costs, heating, ventilation, all the HVAC, all that kind of stuff over the course of the year.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think we have had a lot of lessons learned from remote learning, and I think you're absolutely right. I think a lot of students at the secondary level are doing very well with, this kind of independent learning and schedule and some of that flexibility and freedom. We know some are not doing as well. So I guess it's a big change to what we're used to, what we have been used to. So I'm just not sure. Is it the best thing for students? I don't know. So I'm just wrapping my mind around that. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then, I just want to say that I do appreciate the work that has gone into this. It's a clear presentation. It gives us a really good sense of, what we're looking at. And I know that it took a lot of time and effort. So thank you.
I don't have a lot of additional comments. I appreciate the clarification about goal, because that was one of my concerns as well. So thanks for asking the questions for me, and thank you for clarifying. I too am not 100% on the 4 days. I do appreciate the outside of the box thinking though, because that's what we need right now, right? I think I just need to ruminate on that a little bit more and
wonder, is
maybe
there
even
more
talk to my
data?
own kids and see, what do you think about it, and talk to some students and teachers, and I'd love to get feedback from that. So I'm sure I'll get 5,000 emails now, but hey, that's all right. That's great. I would love to actually hear people's opinions on that, and I'm sure that they will be varied as everything else is.
Do you think?
I think they might be. I
Maybe.
think they might be a little, but very evenly balanced, perhaps, is what I'm seeing. So, yeah, that's really, I appreciate as well, like Tony mentioned, the no more planners that I fought my children to make them use, and they never did. So that's excellent that we won't be spending money on that. Yeah, a lot of these things, it's nice that, like you said, would have been happening anyway, so it makes this a little bit easier, even though it's not easy. So thank you for this presentation.
Can I ask one more question now that you guys have all gone all the way through? So when you guys talk about kids thriving in this environment and people thinking outside the box, I guess we've talked about this a little bit in my own district, where classes that are typically taught in summer school, which we have now converted into all remote learning, essentially with actual teachers instead of Edgenuity. Like I could teach physics online over the summer and get a whole physics class in a summer, right? We do civics, we do government, we could do chemistry, there's all these classes that now exist remotely with our own teachers. So there might be an opportunity there to maybe have some kids pick up classes in a different way who really this kind of environment is working for, and teachers who maybe, who knows, I don't want to say who knows how long this is going to go, because it's going to go forever. I just feel it. But what if there are some staff members who are concerned going forwards and who, have some, I don't want to say have very specific skills, but teach very specific courses, which although typically would have been taught in the summer, could now be taught remotely by actual staff members, which would also alleviate some of the pressure in the buildings. Just a thought.
Thank you for thinking outside the box,
Right.
Mrs. Swanson. Good job.
That didn't actually come from me, that came from the neighboring district that I work at, but.
That's okay.
It's okay.
I'll give you
We'll
credit
take it
right now.
anyways. That's good.
So finally, I just have a few questions very quickly. My only concern, and I know it's $45,000 and everyone's excited about getting rid of student planners, is we're talking about at the secondary level. My understanding is currently we purchase them starting at second grade, and we will not be one-to-one from second through fifth grade. So what is
This year for planners for secondary for 6-12.
so
And
we would still be printing them for second
Yes,
through,
correct.
for elementary?
for elementary, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Second, I'm looking at the total at 5.7, and while the lessons learned, we're looking at this 4 days, and I will be honest, there are some benefits for all kids, even ones that struggle a little bit with the opportunity to have a little bit more independence. I think that if we are at 5.7 million with this, though, I would rather see this built into a structure that was for the benefit of the kids rather than as a budget cut, and take some time on that, just because there's so many questions about everything involved. And I think one of the big lessons we've learned this year is, if nothing else, you need to take a little bit more time when you can to really look at this stuff before you just decide on it. So what I would offer is that could we take that off and we would still be over the 5 million we asked for, and then perhaps move the 4 days and 1 day to an academic sort of teaching and learning style process where it would be more traditionally vetted through committees and so forth.
That would be what we would do with it either way, if the board is interested in us pursuing this idea.
I think we have to think carefully too, because even if we take that off and we say we're at 5 million, some of these other things are not a guarantee, right?
Right.
So we have to be careful that we're not saying that, because then we're going to end up in a position of trying to figure out what do we cut.
Makes
Yeah,
sense.
the way I would envision it with that, Lori, is a committee, a committee of teachers and people coming together. If the board's interested in this, and we'd like to present that idea with the specifics of it.
So it's not a guaranteed budget cut, it's just an initial thought about what it could look like.
I think it's something that could very well happen, and I think people would be very interested in it, but the specifics of what I'm
wouldn't
talking
be for
about would
next
need to
year.
be fleshed out and worked out for, yeah.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
But the concern for me is this 1.5, that's what we're still short, even with all these cuts? Am I reading this right?
No.
No, that we can't cut for this year.
Gotcha.
To some extent, it's for next year. However, it looks like the deficit has been reduced from where it was when we'd approved it.
Yeah,
so.
as Christy presented, if making the $5 million worth of reductions for the following budget year, her estimates show about a $1 million surplus at the end of the year, if all things played out.
So I'd like to highlight just one more part of this. There's one item on secondary staff that if there's an area that I would like to see adjusted, it would be in that, but that's for closed session. So I will handle that in a different way. However, I do want to really highlight this restructuring of the benefits. I think when we take a look at this and we start to see what's involved in this, I am beyond appreciative of our community. I'm beyond impressed with the abilities of our human resources staff to make this an opportunity. It's something very unique that will not hurt our staff. And I hate to say I'm excited about a budget cut, but I'm kind of excited for people about that one. I'm not going to lie. And there's more that'll be involved.
I was going
Yes.
to say, as I stated earlier, it's been something that we've been working on. I shouldn't say we, I should say Ken and his team. This is Ken Miller's idea, something that he and I have talked about for a couple of years now, but it's taken that long to bring this to fruition. But he's the one that drove this one home and pushed it across the goal line, so it goes to him.
And I can't wait till you can share more about that. That's pretty cool. So thank you for doing that. That is, when we talk about outside of the box thinking, this is that. Other than that, I mean, I really appreciate the clear way this is presented. I appreciate the sensitivity to the staff and not picking and choosing and brandishing positions for everyone to vote on. I think that these look well-reasoned. I think when we're talking about the fact that we're at a point where we need to make serious cuts, this looks like something that I could see as being the least harmful of budget cuts, and I really appreciate that, so thank you.
You're most welcome. And as I stated earlier, that was the goal.
Cool.
Okay, that's the report.
So are we, as a board, we're offering the direction that we will present this for an action item as it's been presented now for our next meeting. Is anyone in a majority agreement that you would like to see anything changed? If not, we will be presenting this for action.
So as a package, like.
As a package.
Yay or
This will-
nay?
Yes, we will not be doing line by line.
Right.
I'm not sure where I am yet, but it sounds like there's a couple of board members that are not sure about the 1 day online. So maybe that is an option B. I know we don't want to compartmentalize this down into a bunch of different fractions, but
I think that's probably the most changing on a day-to-day basis for the kids.
so, depending on what board members' thoughts are, we might consider either making that as a separate line item, and I think that can be resolved through conversations.
And I believe I remember which board members, if you can please organize, if you can see if that's something that your fellow board members are interested in, that would be great. Okay. Action items. Item 8.1. Can I have a motion, please?
I make a motion to approve board policies. Section 2, School Board 2:105. Section 4, Operational Services 4:80 and 4:90. Section 5, General Personnel 5:120. Section 6, Instruction 6:3235, 6:300, 6:340. Section 7, Students 7:100, 7:300, and 7:340.
I make a motion to separate item 5:120 and vote on that separately, so I don't have to vote no on everything.
Sure.
I'll
Would
second.
you like me to read it again?
Ally is seconded.
Do I need to read it
We-
again?
Needs a second on that request.
He has a
Ally's-
second, so we need to vote on Brent's motion first, please.
I make a motion to. Do I
No,
need
he
to
already
make a
made the motion.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So,
Mrs. Doyle,
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson,
Aye.
Mrs. Moyer,
Aye.
Mr. Lightfoot,
Aye.
Mr. Bauman,
Aye.
Mrs. Croner,
aye.
Ms. Morgan.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. We'll separate out 5:120, was it?
Yes.
Yep.
So this motion will be item 8.1 as amended.
Okay. You want me to read that one first then?
I believe, is that how it would work? Yeah, okay. Yep.
I make a motion to approve Board Policy 5, Section 5, General Personnel, 5:120.
Second.
Ms. Morgan,
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle,
No.
Mrs. Moyer,
Aye.
Mrs. Croner,
Aye.
Mr. Bauman,
Aye.
Mr. Lightfoot,
No.
Mrs. Swanson.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-2.
I make a motion to approve Board Policies, Section 2, School Board, 2:105, Section 4, Operational Services, 4:80, 4:90, Section 6, Instruction, 6:235, 6:300, 6:340, Section 7, Students, 7:100, 7:300, and 7:340.
Second.
Mrs. Swanson,
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle,
Aye.
Ms. Morgan,
Aye.
Mrs. Croner,
Aye.
Mr. Bauman,
Aye.
Mrs. Moyer,
Aye.
Mr. Lightfoot.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Item 8.2.
I make a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the issuance of tax anticipation warrants in anticipation of the collection of taxes levied for the year 2020 by the Board of Education of Community Unit School District Number 308, Kendall, Kane, and Will Counties, Illinois, for educational purposes.
Second.
Mrs. Croner,
Aye.
Mr. Lightfoot,
Aye.
Mrs. Moyer,
Aye.
Ms. Morgan,
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson,
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle,
Aye.
Mr. Bauman.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Item 8.3.
I make a motion to approve the resolution authorizing loans totaling $14,400,000 from the Working Cash Fund to the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund and Educational Fund pursuant to 105 ILCS 5-20-5.
Second.
Ms. Morgan,
Aye.
Mrs. Croner,
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle,
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson,
Aye.
Mr. Bauman,
Aye.
Mr. Lightfoot,
Aye.
Mrs. Moyer.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Item 8.4.
I make a motion to approve the resolution authorizing loans totaling $5,300,000 from the Operations and Maintenance Fund to the Educational Fund and $2,100,000 from the Transportation Fund to the Educational Fund pursuant to 105 ILCS 5-10-22.33.
Second.
Mr. Lightfoot,
Aye.
Ms. Morgan,
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle,
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson,
Aye.
Mr. Bauman,
Aye.
Mrs. Moyer,
Aye.
Mrs. Croner.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Item 8.5.
I make a motion to approve the impact bargaining as discussed in closed session.
Second.
Mrs. Doyle,
Aye.
Ms. Morgan,
Aye.
Mr. Lightfoot,
No.
Mrs. Moyer,
Aye.
Mrs. Croner,
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson,
Aye.
Mr. Baumann.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-1. Item 8.6 from Ursula Studer.
I make a motion to approve the personnel report as presented.
Second.
Mr. Lightfoot.
Aye.
Ms. Morgan.
Aye.
Mr. Baumann.
Aye.
Mrs. Moyer.
Aye.
Mrs. Croner.
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson.
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle.
I, Ursula Studer. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Well,
And I
are you
wish us
sure?
all luck getting home.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.